It might be your dream to work remotely, but how do you actually go about landing that remote job? Hey everyone, I'm Anthony Cofrancesco from Honest Careers, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about some special tips and tricks that you can do to land a remote job in 2021. Make sure you stick around until the end of the episode because I'm also going to be giving you one special tip that not many people know about for using a company's own resources to help you land a job. Let's jump into it. Now, it's no secret that remote working is pretty cool. Some jobs will give you the flexibility to work anywhere in the world, to choose your own hours, as well as just having a job that allows you to really take better freedom and control over your own life. But it's also a little bit different from a traditional working environment and therefore has a slightly different set of rules and tips about how you can land that job. Okay, so why is this topic important? Well, first and foremost, in the past year, we've seen a handful of companies go the way of having remote workers rather than going into a physical office environment. But with remote working, there are some nuanced changes that are a little bit different from a traditional desk job. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about those and how you can actually stand out from other candidates and land your dream remote job. Now, what has changed in the past couple of years really comes down to 2020, especially with COVID-19. Ever since the pandemic broke out, many companies have been forced to move remote. Now, a lot of people early on thought that this was going to be temporary, but what we're seeing is that most companies are actually finding that their employees are much happier not having to spend the time and the money and all of that effort to commute back and forth. In fact, when the majority of employees are surveyed and they say, hey, would you prefer to go back to a work environment or work from home? The majority of employees are actually saying that they would prefer to stay remote or at least mostly remote. So here's what you can actually do to land a remote job in 2021. So what about the actual tips? How do you go about landing a remote job? First is look in the right spot. Two job boards that I absolutely love and I recommend to everyone. First is dynamitejobs.com and the other is weworkremotely.com. Both of these job sites are job boards that are specifically tailored towards remote jobs. So these companies have been hiring remote workers for quite some time. They're used to it and they have many jobs that are available there. The second is if you don't see a company or a job type on either of those two job boards, go to Google. The cool thing is that there are many companies that have recently transitioned or recently announced that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, they've actually found that their workers are much happier doing remote jobs. So you've seen major companies like Spotify recently that have said, we are no longer expecting anyone who doesn't want to come back into the physical office. So what you can do is go to Google/news and you can actually go and search headlines. What I recommend is typing in remote jobs and then companies and just see what comes up. You'll see a lot of headlines related to those types of stories. The next tip seems like a no-brainer, and I feel like I shouldn't have to say it, but it is read the full job description. Yes, I know sometimes these can be long, but sometimes employers are going to specifically put in what we would call an Easter egg. This is like some small little piece of the job description, and they really want to put it in there to make sure that people are reading the entire application. This might come up either in the interview or sometime during the application process. And it might be something simple as like, what's your favorite football team? Or what's 9 plus 15? And again, this is really to make sure that you read every part of the job description. I cannot stress this enough. Employers are getting so many applications, especially for remote jobs, and putting some kind of little Easter egg in the job description is a great way to weed out candidates that just didn't take the time to go through and read the full job description. The next tip is treating the job application process like it's a full-time job. Most of these applications are not quick or easy to do. Some applications might take you 1, 2, or even more than 2 hours to finish. And so when you're looking for a job, whether you're unemployed or you're just not happy in the job you have right now, treat the application process like it's a full-time job. Make yourself a schedule, try to spend and track your time spending 40 or more hours a week on the application process, on the interview process, on searching for different jobs. Too often than not, I see people who get discouraged. They put in one job application and either they don't hear back, or after the interview, they're told that they didn't get the job and they say, okay, I'm putting my hands up. I guess I'm just not hireable. You need to be persistent if you want to get the job. And again, if you treat this like a full time job, it's going to be a much higher probability. It's really just a numbers game. You're going to get better at the process and you're going to have a much higher likelihood of landing a job. You also want to do whatever you can to go the extra mile. And so sometimes this can be as simple as hiring a copy editor to go through, if you have a long job application, put it into a Google Doc and go on to Fiverr, go on to Upwork, and have someone, it might only cost you 10 or 15 bucks, but have someone go through and make sure that there's not glaringly obvious grammatical mistakes or switching up the way that you wrote certain things just to make it sound a little bit better. Also considering if you're applying for a job, go the extra mile by putting in something like a video. Allow your personality to shine through very quickly in just about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Explain who you are, what you plan on bringing to the table, and why the company should consider hiring you or at least allowing you to interview. The last tip here is about networking. Now, you might be saying, how in the world am I supposed to network if the whole world is shut down because of COVID? Well, there's a couple ways that you can do this. First is if you're looking at applying for a job, go on to LinkedIn and see if you have any personal connections or maybe second and third degree connections that can introduce you or make a referral for you in that company. So if I want to go work at Spotify, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go onto LinkedIn and I'm going to see, do I have any second or third degree connections with people that know someone who works at Spotify? It might seem like this is a long shot, but it's actually really very realistic and easy to make happen. It just takes a little bit of legwork. The other thing you can do is join other Facebook groups. And so let's say you're applying for an engineering job. What you can go is you can search for different engineering groups, network from a digital perspective. When they have podcasts, when they have live streams, go and join those live streams. You can ask questions and you can really get a lot of headway by making connections with either people who work in that company or people who are close personal connections. My final tip is consider getting some remote working experience. Now, this doesn't need to be a full-time job. What I recommend is consider working on Upwork or Fiverr. Even if it's just for limited hours, what this really helps you to do is it helps companies to see that you have experience working in the past in a remote environment, and it can be a real big game changer. So if you've made it to this point in the video, first off, thank you. And here is your bonus item. Almost every company nowadays is putting out some form of content. And some of the best ways to learn about a company is consuming that content. So if they have a podcast, if they have a YouTube channel, go in and absorb as much as you can. Believe it or not, the little bits of company culture are going to really permeate through the content that they're producing. In fact, one that I would really recommend is episode 195 from Empire Flippers. In this piece of content, they clearly spell out their entire hiring process in about an hour and a half podcast. So this might sound crazy to think that a company would do this, but it actually happens more often than not. So if you could get the inside scoop on how to directly apply and get a job at that company, sometimes it might be right in front of your face on their YouTube channel or in a podcast series that they have. So with that being said, if you found that helpful, please give us a thumbs up, comment your questions down below, and we'll see you in the next video.